Hey guys, and welcome to Comics and Chill, and today we are talking about Spider-Man Reign by Kaare Andrews. Now, I've always had a soft spot for stories about alternate universe versions of beloved characters and strange what-if or Elseworld style stories, so I was pretty excited when Kaare Andrews' Spider-Man Reign was announced. If memory serves, it was kind of marketed as Marvel's version of The Dark Knight Returns, and that sounded right up my street. So I ended up picking up the hardcover when it was first released, and my initial reaction to the story was a bit of disappointment. Something didn't quite land, and I put it down and kind of forgot about it until I reread it this week, and we're going to dig into this book today. So Spider-Man Reign was 4 oversized issues. It was published in late 2006 into early 2007, and it's set 30 years in the future with Spider-Man returning to fight an authoritarian regime that runs New York City. And I'm mainly just going to talk about the first issue and the setup of the series, because even though this book has a few kinks, I really do recommend that you give it a read for yourself. Now, at the beginning of the story, they set up that New York has been free of superpowered crime or super terrorism for 10 years, but we quickly see that this is because of the authoritarian Mayor Waters and his military police force known as the Reign. And we see that Peter Parker is a lonely old man. He's living in a crummy, terrible little apartment and working as a florist. However, when we are introduced to him, we see him getting fired from the florist for buggering up some couple's flower order for their wedding. And on his way home, he is assaulted by Reign police officers. He gets into an altercation with them. And we also see that he is being haunted by hallucinations of Mary Jane, who has passed away. And not long after he arrives home, we see an even older J. Jonah Jameson pay a visit to Peter Parker's apartment to give him a package and to also try and apologize for everything that he and the Daily Bugle did to Spider-Man over the years. But Peter doesn't respond, barely acknowledges that he's there. And after JJ leaves, he deliberately starts some shit with the Reign officers, just as we see Peter open the package that he delivered to him, and it reveals the mask from his old black costume. And JJ, as he's getting beaten by the officers, calls out for Peter, almost like he's done this on purpose to try and coax him out. And Peter answers the call, wearing nothing but his black mask and his undies, and he beats the crap out of the officers and saves JJ. And all this is going on just as the mayor is prepping to launch a gigantic electronic shield over New York, which is named the Web. And he's pissed to hear about the return of Spidey. He's going to ruin his plans. However, it's revealed that he has a version of the Sinister Six, incarcerated, who he tasks with bringing down Spider-Man to earn their freedom. And that pretty much sets up the first issue, and from this point on, Spidey's on the quest to overcome his demons, destroy the massive electronic web covering New York, and to topple the mayor's regime. Along the way, we get to see some glimpses of other characters and elements of Spider-Man's history in this dystopian future, such as the fate of the Kingpin as an emaciated prisoner of Mayor Waters, a brief appearance from the character Hypno Hustler, who I'd actually never heard of. And we also get to see, Kaare Andrews' take on the Sinister Six, giving them a slightly more grounded and military look, which really fits in nicely with the world he's created here. There were a few controversies involving this book, one of which involved Marvel actually beating DC to the punch on featuring some superhero schlong, where an old Peter Parker is sitting in the nude on his bed and we get a glimpse of his meat and two veg, if you know what I'm saying. And Kaare Andrews said that he was trying to go for an edgier sort of European vibe, and took inspiration from Elektra Lives Again, where apparently Frank Miller drew Matt Murdock's dong. But the editors did actually push back on this. However, the original uncensored page was accidentally published and included in the print file, which eventually led to those issues being recalled where possible and the censored version was included in future printings. There was also quite a lot of fuss, and still remains to this day, over the cause of Mary Jane's death, which came as a result of cancer from radiation poisoning, with the radiation coming from Peter's blood, and it is mentioned other bodily fluids, which led to all sorts of jokes about Mary Jane being killed by spider sperm or spider jizz, etc., yada yada. And that's actually one portion of the book that, I really didn't have much of a problem with it. Maybe it was a slow news day at the time, but for some reason it just didn't bother me. I think if I have sort of one complaint about the series, is that I actually could have done with more Spider-Man. Obviously, Peter's really broken down at the start of this story, so much to the point where the character is not, he's barely recognizable in the way that he speaks and behaves, and it takes a really long time to get to the point where he is resembling the Spider-Man that he used to be. And this journey feels even longer as it's broken up by a lot of expositional sort of news report scenes and a plot line which follows a gang of street kids. I think the story would have been stronger if it was a lot more trimmed down and we get to spend more time with Peter. I mean, it's a dark story, so to say you want it to be lighter, I know it's kind of contradicting what the story is, but I guess, the tragedy of Spider-Man is that those who he knows and loves are in danger simply by the fact that they know him. So maybe it is the ultimate tragedy that his life has ended up this way, but maybe it's the only way it could have ended. Just him being Spider-Man is what got his wife killed through the radiation. And one of the main things that has always made him, I always found made Spider-Man relatable to, kids, teens, 20-somethings, even old gits like myself, is that you could always see yourself, in his struggles, in some aspect of his struggles. He's juggling so much, like everyone is, earning a living, making rent, paying bills, maintaining a family life, and on top of that, saving New York City from psychopaths on a seemingly daily basis. But somehow, he still got it done, and he's always able to mask the pain of it, with a laugh and a joke, and he'll always get through it and bounce back from whatever he's put through. And this is something I find quite unique to Spider-Man. You don't see it in Batman or Wolverine so much. In their present day versions, those guys are miserable. They're miserable in the present, they're miserable in the future, So with Spider-Man, in this story, seeing him at the ultimate end with nothing left to bounce back from or to, it really doesn't feel... I don't know, it's just hard to see the character like that, I think. And I definitely think there is a great old man story of Peter to be told. I'm just not sure if this is the one for him. You'd like to imagine him one day being able to settle down and enjoy his twilight years in some sort of peace. I do think that the concept of an old Spider-Man is really cool, but there's probably a million different ways that one could tell an old man Spidey story. Chip Zdarsky recently did Spider-Man Life Story, which I really enjoyed. And I think there's elements of that too in Tom DeFalco's Spider-Girl. In terms of the art, Kaare Andrews' cartooning and line work in this is absolutely brilliant. His gestural drawing is lean, yet full of energy. And, I do like his work and how much of a one-man band that he is. He definitely takes risks and experiments, and they don't always pay off, but I do appreciate that he is trying to push the envelope, and you can tell that he is having fun in the process. It took me a few years to realize that the guy who was drawing these kind of interiors in this more, cartoony style also had the mad skills needed to pull off pieces with more realism too. I mean, look at these covers. He's been doing covers for years. He's one of the early digital painters in comics. And I remember when they relaunched the Ultimate Comic Universe, I think it was for like the third time. He handled the covers on those, and it's just the guy's got range. However, one element that I'm not certain of in this book is the use of CGI models. They are blended in pretty well with help from the color palette by Jose Villarrubia. They do really sort of, they're not the focal point, so that the colors do help push them back. But if you do focus on them, they look a little hokey in places, and like I said earlier, I appreciate the experimentation with them. I think maybe using them as a guide for tracing over or something might have been a better way to go. It does lead to issues with perspective here and there. I mean, the perspective is fine, but sort of elements like the windows and doors, they sort of look a little flat. If you compare the CGI backgrounds in this book to something like Spider-Man Quality of Life, which I've also got a video on, they definitely work better here, and it's just a minor gripe of mine. But with all my little moaning and nitpicking there, this book is definitely worth picking up and reading if you haven't. It's got some interesting ideas on a future for Spider-Man. It might not be the future that I want for him, but it's a pretty cool story, and it's really impressive that Kaare Andrews accomplished the majority of this by himself. And he's had some other recent books which he's handled the majority of the chores on too. Iron Fist, he had an Iron Fist series recently, and another series with, I forget the publisher's name. I'll put it on the screen if I remember it later. But he had another series that he did recently, also sort of inspired by Spider-Man, called Erratic. And I haven't read it yet, but the concept sounds really cool. Sort of inspired by Spider-Man, a high school kid who has superpowers, but he can only use them for like 5 or 10 minutes each day. I'm going to read those probably this week, and I'm sure I'll end up reviewing them on the channel. But yeah, pick up Spider-Man Reign if you get a chance. You see back issues or a collected edition. And that's about all I got for you. I'd like to remind you to stop by www.tropicocomics.com to sign up to our newsletter. We're not going to be spamming you. There probably won't be a lot of emails over the next month, but it's mainly just there to keep people informed on like the projects that I've got coming up. There's 2 comic books I'm working on, one which I'm writing and drawing, and another which I'm writing and another artist is handling the artwork, and that book especially looks incredible, and I can't wait to show it to you guys when I can. Also, subscribe and follow us on the YouTube channel. We're on Instagram, a little bit of action on Twitter, but not too much. And until next time, take it easy.